With 8 weeks to survive amongst 21 other campers in order to win $1 million, it makes sense that during that time, players will make alliances, friendships, and even enemies. But what connections will prove that they can stand the test of time and which ones will crumble on impact? Hi, I'm Caleb with Wicked Binge, and this is Total Drama Island Non-Romantic Relationships Healthy to Toxic. For this list, we'll be focusing on the connections made during this season that do not result in a romance. If you're interested in those, you should check out our video of Total Drama Couples Healthy to Toxic. We'll be diving into the bonds and relationships formed amongst the 22 campers, as well as Chris and Chef throughout the 8 weeks spent at Camp Wawananakwa. With that clarification made, let's start with the healthy and friendly relationships that are made. Our gold medal of healthiness goes to Lindsay and Sadie. Though they don't interact as much as the other campers, the notable bond between these two happens in Phobia Factor. While sitting around the campfire with the other campers, one by one they all share the things that they're scared of. Sadie mentions that her worst fear is a bad haircut, causing Lindsay to agree and take back her initial fear of walking through a minefield in heels. When the challenge is started, both girls are tasked with wearing mullet wigs for the entirety of the day. They share visible discomfort as the wigs are put onto them. When they take off the wigs at the end of the day, they both compliment one another about how cute they look.
I totally forgot how cute you are!
It's a sweet moment between the two, coming off of Katie's elimination and Sadie being upset about her best friend leaving. Our silver medal of healthiness goes to the connection between Lashana and the majority of the cast. With the exception of Heather, Lashana creates really great vibes with a majority of her fellow campers. She's really friendly with everyone when she first arrives on the island, save for a minor misunderstanding with Harold. Lashana is no stranger for standing up against those who pick on her fellow teammates. She stands up for Beth in a few arguments the latter has with Heather, and is an ally to Gwen in Heather's constant assault to get the goth girl voted off the island. Lashana also stands up for Bridget after Eva returns to camp, and makes it her personal mission to make her former teammate miserable. In the episode Hot Camp Tour, several eliminated players make mention of how great a player Lashana is, and how there's really nothing negative anyone can say about her. When given the chance to choose who gets eliminated next, Katie and Sadie mistakenly vote for her, thinking Chris was asking who they wanted to have join them at the resort.
To have her here? Definitely Lashana!
This causes a chain reaction of players saying her name and inadvertently voting for her. Lashana may have been unfairly voted off, but she's seen as one of the most well-liked campers in the group. Our bronze medal of healthiness goes to Beth and Lindsay. These two become connected due to them joining into an alliance with Heather. Outside of their involvement in the alliance, we don't see much interaction between these two. In the reunion special at the end of the series, it's revealed that Beth and Lindsay have become best friends and spent a lot of time together since Lindsay's arrival to play a day losers.
If you win and you buy France, will you have me over? For sure!
When given the chance to compete for $1 million, these two immediately pair up and eventually qualify to compete together in the next season. Next up is BFFs Katie and Sadie. When we're first introduced to these two, we learn that they've been friends for a very long time, even getting chickenpox together. They are devastated to initially be on separate teams, but manage to convince Chris to do some swapping around. Katie and Sadie do everything together, including falling asleep. In the episode The Sucky Outdoors, the two girls stop to eat some blueberries and get separated from the rest of their team. Katie and Sadie attempt to find them, but end up getting lost in the woods. Because of this, Sadie begins to call out Katie for her lack of direction, and they get into their first fight.
You're not exactly the best with, that direction.
The two girls point out each other's flaws, with it culminating at Katie's response that she believes she's prettier than Sadie. They put their fight on hold to find shelter from the storm and eventually join back up with their team in the morning. The late arrival of the two girls causes the killer Bffs to lose the challenge and Katie ends up getting eliminated. Sadie is distraught that Katie is gone, but reunites with her friend once she's been eliminated. These two show that a fight can't stop years of friendship. Following after are Gwen and Owen. This duo doesn't have a lot of interaction until the final few episodes. In I Triple Dog Dare You, Gwen convinces Owen to give her half of his challenge freebies and to force Heather to complete all dares given to either of them. She does this by promising half the prize money if she wins or splitting a box of donuts if he wins.
I'll swing for a box of donuts.
In the finale, Gwen mentions that Owen is one of the few people that made her experience at camp relatively tolerable. She gives Owen a muffin she believes came from Trent and states that she'll follow through with her plan to split the prize money if she wins. After finding out that Owen plans to use the money for a giant party on a yacht, she calls out all the supporters to swap to his side at that revelation. In Gwen's ending, Owen is happy for her to win and even happier that she may plan to throw a party as well. Coming up next are DJ and Jeff. These two become fairly good friends due to being on the same team and even join in a guys' alliance. More on that later. Jeff tells DJ of his attempts to win over Bridget, but DJ is quick to mention how Jeff should stop trying to make moves towards her and let her come to him instead.
You want the bunny to come to you so you don't make any sudden moves.
DJ is such good friends with Jeff that he entrusts the latter to look after his bunny, only for the bunny to get eaten by a chain of animals and Jeff to tell DJ the truth. Next are Bridget and Gwen. The two girls begin to bond when the girls and guys are separated for a challenge of the sexes. They both appreciate Lashana and dislike Heather. Their biggest interaction comes in Extreme Torture, where the girls discover an anonymous romantic haiku poem. Each girl claims it comes from their crush and they get into a small argument over it. After subtly trying to figure out which crush is the anonymous writer, Gwen and Bridget discover neither of the guys wrote it and decide to make up. Following them is Bridget and the girls prior to the merge. In Brunch of Disgustingness, the girls and guys are put together in teams to compete against each other. When Bridget moves over to the girls' cabin, she enters in on an argument in progress. The girls then divide the cabin into two sides and force Bridget to choose who she aligns with, either Heather and Lindsay or Gwen and Lashana. Later in the challenge, Bridget helps to motivate her teammates at several points when they doubt being able to eat their disgusting food, especially Lindsay. After them are Jeff and Gwen. This pair gets their most involvement in Trial by Tri-Arm Triathlon, where they get handcuffed together for the challenge. In the feeding part of the challenge, Jeff's decision to savor the food frustrates Gwen as she wants them to finish as fast as possible.
This is a contest!
Whilst canoeing to Boney Island, Gwen becomes irritated by Jeff's stories about his friend Jay. Jeff then begins taking pictures of the wildlife, which pushes Gwen over the edge, telling him to take things seriously and stop pretending to be her friend. Jeff insists that he's not pretending and that he would have been her friend had they gone to the same school. He also decides to invite her to the next party he has after he discovers Gwen has never been to a party. This kindles a small friendship between the two. Next up is the Guys Alliance. The Guys Alliance starts out with Duncan, DJ, and Jeff. This alliance was able to quickly form due to all three guys being on the Killer Bass team. We mostly see this trio harassing Harold as comeuppance for the nerd constantly leaving his gross underwear everywhere. They take away all his clean underwear, make him eat a dirty pair, and even put hot sauce in another. The trio eventually gets Harold to swear not to leave his underwear around anymore. The Guys Alliance continues to be strong when Owen and Trent join them to help take the win in the Brunch of Disgustingness. They continually lean on one another for support and decide to make smart decisions in voting when their numbers begin to be a disadvantage. Just escaping the gray area is Chris and Chef Hatchet. Sometimes they're good friends and sometimes they're at each other's throats. Chris often makes Chef test out challenges when he runs out of interns to do so, putting Chef in danger every now and then. This often causes Chris to hear constant complaints about how Hatchet will threaten to leave the show if he's continually treated this way. Conversely, Chris will often have Hatchet have involvement in the challenges just so they can delight in their shared enjoyment of torturing the teens. These two may bicker every now and then, but both are essential to keep the show running. Now we move on to the relationships that have the potential to have either gotten better or gone worse. This is the gray area. Starting off this section is Courtney and her relationship with the Killer Bass team. When she's first introduced, Courtney is rather friendly to several of her other competitors. However, she immediately tries to take charge in the very first challenge, much to the dismay of her teammates. Courtney often makes remarks about how she used to be a counselor in training, so she's the best qualified to lead the team.
Hey! With CIT camping experience here.
For as much as the team complains about her bossy nature, she managed to stay on through 12 challenges before the vote was rigged to send her home. Because of this, we don't know if she was supposed to have gotten eliminated that week or if she would have stayed on longer and maybe improved her relationship with her team. We're ranking all these together since the issues are all similar. Izzy and Noah's relationships with the Screaming Gophers and the Killer Bass's relationship with Tyler and Katie and Sadie. Going in chronological order, Noah was the first from his team to be eliminated due to his lack of support. During the dodgeball game, he weaseled his way out of playing with varying excuses and then proceeded to berate his team when they lost.
I'll tell you, the team spirit here is severely lacking lately.
Katie and Sadie's decision to stop and eat blueberries, which caused them to get lost, ended up costing their team the win in the challenge when they were the last two to arrive. Tyler's fear of chickens completely took over him and kept the Killer Bass from winning the Phobia Factor challenge. Finally, Izzy's decision to imitate a bear to scare her team was a childish idea and ended up attracting a real bear to the team's campsite, forcing them to sleep in a tree all night. These team members made some poor decisions that ended up with them losing rapport with their respective teams. Continuing on, we come to Izzy and Heather. Their interaction is a short but interesting one. In Wawanakwa Gone Wild, teens are each given a particular animal to track down and bring back to the campsite. Izzy is supposed to trap a deer, and Heather's in charge of bringing back a bear. Izzy ends up getting a tranquilizer gun to assist in the hunt, but is shown constantly shooting the wrong targets. She ends up accidentally shooting Heather due to the latter dressing up as a deer at Duncan's suggestion to attract a bear. Heather then refuses to get the dart taken out until she knows for sure that Izzy is eliminated. Following them is Trent and his relationship with the rest of the cast. In the episode Search and Do Not Destroy, each player is tasked with retrieving a key from a particular area in the hopes that it may open a treasure chest with a prize inside. Gwen shares her first kiss with Trent when he helps her get her key, but ends up witnessing Heather manipulate him to kiss her against his will. Later in the episode, Gwen, believing it to be real, recruits LaShonda to get everyone to vote off Heather. However, she ends up winning invincibility, so Trent is the only other vote and he gets sent home. They all initially believed Trent to be a two-timer, but were quickly relieved to figure out it was just another scheme of Heather's. After that is Cody and Gwen. Cody immediately develops a huge crush on Gwen, and it gets a bit out of hand. He insists on hanging around her when she tells him to go away, and he attempts to act like Trent, who he knows Gwen likes. In Up the Creek, Gwen is reluctantly paired with Cody and continually turns down his attempts to go out with her.
I'm not going out with you.
Cody eventually backs off and acknowledges her crush on Trent, telling her that the guitarist feels the same and that he's willing to put a bug in Trent's ear to make things happen. Gwen is excited at this prospect until she learns that Cody has an ulterior motive of getting her bra for a side bet. Cody does follow through on his end of the bargain, and Gwen is willing to help fulfill the bet since she can now be with Trent. Just escaping the toxic section is Chef Hatchet and Izzy. These two have an interesting exchange in the episode Hide and Be Sneaky. Whilst Chef is attempting to find the teens in an island-wide game of hide and seek, Izzy is imitating him just out of sight and disappearing before she's discovered. She eventually is found out in the lodge and ends up engaging Chef Hatchet in hand-to-hand combat. They prove to be fairly equal before Izzy is able to get the upper hand and escape. Neither one seemed to intend to harm the other, but it was an interesting fight to watch. Finally, we reach the relationships that have no chance of recovering. These are the toxic. At the top of this section, we have Ezekiel and his relationship with the rest of the cast. This teen unfortunately didn't last very long on the show, as he points out at the end of the first challenge that the Screaming Gophers shouldn't have won with as many girls as they had on their team. When asked to explain, Ezekiel explains that guys are stronger and better at sports, which angers several of the girls and even gets him put in a chokehold.
Guys are much stronger and better at sports than girls are.
Jeff attempts to come to his rescue, assuming that Zeke doesn't also think that guys are smarter than girls, but the homeschool team immediately pipes up and confirms his belief. Next is Izzy and Lashana. During the canoeing challenge to Boney Island, Izzy makes a suggestion for the killer Bffs to flutter kick their canoes back since their oars were burnt. Lashana tries to cut Izzy off for this, but the team takes the suggestion and ends up winning the challenge. Lashana remarks that Izzy should be voted off for helping the other team, but Izzy fires back, stating that Lashana's lucky that her license to kill is expired.
You are so lucky that my license to kill is currently expired.
Lashana immediately decides to go after Izzy with an oar in anger. Considering all the things that Izzy has said, it's possible to a small degree that this threat might be true, but then again, this is Izzy we're talking about. Coming after is Lashana and Gwen's relationship with Heather. This feud was the most long-standing through the series and always had its fair share of screen time. Gwen and Heather begin to hate each other from the moment they first meet, with each girl being the antithesis to the other's personality. Heather refers to Gwen as a weird goth girl, reads her diary out loud to the entire viewing world, and even kisses Trent to break up their budding relationship. Gwen every now and then manages to get revenge, such as when she dumped Harold's red ant farm in Heather's bed. Lashana has a similar feud, but isn't picked on as much and usually fights back much more aggressively. When Heather refused to jump into the water in the first challenge, Lashana ended up forcing the drama queen into the water and initiated Heather's resentment for her. Lashana often stands up for Gwen and gets revenge against Heather for her, such as shredding Heather's clothes or locking her in the outhouse confessional just after Owen used it. Another notable feud is the one between Beth and Heather. The relationship between these two began in The Big Sleep, when Heather chooses her and Lindsay to form an alliance and promises to take them to the final three. She sets up unreasonable rules for the girls to follow, threatening to kick them out of the alliance if they disagree.
It's like against the alliance.
Beth had been consistently questioned about her alliance with Heather throughout the series, but finally stood up for herself in Paintball Deer Hunter. Beth gets tired of being bossed around and chooses to quit the alliance, ending up choosing to turn on her teammate and get into a mini paintball war.
I'm tired of being your slave.
Following them is Courtney and Harold. This duo doesn't have a good standing to begin with, as Courtney will criticize various things that Harold does that she finds annoying or disgusting. The toxicity in their relationship comes to a head at the end of Basic Straining, where it is shown that Harold rigged the votes to eliminate Courtney instead of being potentially eliminated himself. Harold did this as revenge towards Duncan for harassing him the whole season, so he decided to get rid of his crush. During their time at Play-A-Day Losers, Harold spends his time hiding from Courtney as she threatens to hurt him for getting her eliminated early.
Wring his skinny, awkward little neck.
While there is justification in Harold's actions, he could have handled it better. Our bronze medal of toxicity goes to Heather and Lindsay. Like with Beth, Lindsay begins her relationship after she joins the alliance initiated by Heather. However, due to her lack of intelligence, Lindsay ends up being manipulated for a lot longer than she ought to have. Heather often makes Lindsay do a lot of grunt work in order to make the other teens suffer, and has no problem insulting and abusing the blonde when things do not go her way.
Now make yourself useful and clip my toenail.
This constant abuse occasionally makes Lindsay question her relationship with Heather, but she relies on her belief that the two are friends. The final nail in the coffin comes during the episode That's Off the Chain, where Heather wins the challenge and Lindsay is eliminated due to technicality. Distraught by the fact that Heather wasn't sad about the elimination and never cared for her, Lindsay finally blows up in a profanity-filled rant. She acknowledges all the awful things that everyone has said about Heather and finally cuts the drama queen from her life. The silver medal of toxicity goes to the relationship between Eva and the cast. In the 24 hours since arriving to the island, we learned from Courtney that Eva had already caused a few instances of property damage due to her temper. When her MP3 player is dropped and taken by Heather, she immediately flies into a frenzied rage and accuses her teammates of stealing it.
One of you must have stolen it. I need my music.
She refuses to let them out of her sight until she finds her music player. When Heather returns the device, Eva immediately realizes that she let her temper get out of control and tries to apologize, only to get voted off. When she makes her return to the show, no one is happy about Eva coming back. She makes it her mission to get revenge against her former Killer Bass team for voting her off and begins to intentionally target Bridget. Eva makes several threats towards the surfer girl and even forces her to take on some of the difficult challenges in No Pain, No Game. At the end of the episode, Chris reveals, through video, that all the other teens chose to vote Eva off because of her rage. Eva's video threatens that if the other players didn't want to go home in body bags, they shouldn't vote for her. In the end, Eva is subdued and put into a straitjacket before being sent on the boat home. Finally, our gold medal for most toxic relationship goes to Chris and Chef Hatchet's relationship with the teens. To no one's surprise, this dynamic between the hosts and the campers has to be the worst in the show. Chris shows little regard for the safety of the teens, as several of the interns who've tested the challenges are either in the hospital or implied to have died. If not for the fact it's a cartoon, several of the injuries these teens sustain would probably have caused permanent damage, if not death. In a similar vein, Chef Hatchet does enjoy torturing the teens as well, but his devious nature is shown in the lack of quality in his food. He intentionally makes disgusting food for the campers to eat to add to their level of misery, despite the fact that he shows throughout the show he can cook food of amazing quality. Chef Hatchet tends to have a little more direct contact with the teens for causing torture, such as when he impersonated a psycho killer to scare them or put them through the tormentuous military training. That's not to say that the two don't entirely care about the teens. When it's revealed in the horror movie challenge that Gwen had encountered an actual psycho killer, the two hosts, along with the rest of the cast, ran to warn her. In addition, Chef Hatchet is occasionally seen tending to the teens when they end up in the infirmary tent. These two do care about the teens to a small degree, but it's mostly an ulterior motive to cause them more suffering. That finishes off our ranking of Total Drama Season 1's non-romantic relationships from healthy to toxic. Are there any bonds or alliances we didn't include? What relationship do you think was the most toxic? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, stay wicked.